The sign on the pool gate appeared on a Saturday morning, and nobody in Heron Point Estates had any idea what it meant yet. A laminated county health department closure notice flapped gently in the October breeze, taped beneath a thick chain and padlock. Behind the gate sat a $420,000 community pool. Zero entry kids section. Dive well. A cabana that had appeared in every single listing photo, every open house brochure, every glossy marketing piece that had ever convinced a family to buy a home in this subdivision over any other. On that same morning, 2 animal control officers were quietly removing the second cottonmouth viper of the day from the pump house beside the pool. A third had already been pulled from the base of the pool ladder just 1 hour earlier, its jaw stretched wide, the cotton-white interior flashing the species' trademark warning. 41 families stared through the fence at a padlocked amenity worth nearly $500,000. Not one of them could say they hadn't been warned. A man named James had come to the HOA board months earlier with data, a binder full of documentation, and 34 years of professional expertise. They had looked at his fence, called it an eyesore, and ordered it demolished. Now the marsh had sent something back through the gap, and it was not done. James was 49 years old, white, tall, lean, short black hair. The kind of quiet that only forms in someone who has spent decades working in places where patience is not a virtue but a necessity. He had logged 34 years as a field biologist for the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources, and reptiles were his specialty. Snakes, specifically. He had been bitten twice in his career. Once by a juvenile copperhead he had underestimated. Once by a cottonmouth that got through a boot he thought was thick enough. Both times, he drove himself to the hospital. Both times, he was back in the field within a week. That was not recklessness. That was understanding, a deep, earned comprehension of how these animals moved, where they traveled, what they needed, and exactly what happened when something in their environment was suddenly, permanently changed. His 11 acres on Lake Marion sat at the heart of what biologists call an ecotone, the narrow, critical transition zone where open lake becomes cypress marsh, becomes upland pine and hardwood forest. Snakes had used that corridor as a travel highway for generations before a single house in Heron Point Estates was even a blueprint. They hunted the marsh edges for frogs and fish. They basked in the warm sunny margins between water and woods. Every late summer, when the marsh got crowded, they pushed inland looking for rodents, shade, and drier ground. In 2015, a developer purchased 60 adjacent acres and broke ground on a 41-lot subdivision. James did not think about noise, traffic, or property values. He thought about the corridor, where it would go once the empty timber land behind it disappeared. He put on his work boots and spent the next 4 months of weekends doing something about it. The fence took every dollar of patience and expertise James had built over 30 years. 640 feet of solid cedar privacy panels, 6 feet tall, posts sunk 3 feet into concrete footings spaced every 8 feet along the full property boundary. And a detail that made the difference between decoration and real protection, a galvanized hardware cloth skirt buried 12 inches underground along the entire base, angled outward. The same technique wildlife facilities use on reptile enclosure perimeters. Snakes are exceptional at finding gaps beneath things. A fence that simply sits on the surface is scenery. That buried skirt cost nearly as much as all the lumber combined. Worth every cent of it. For 9 straight years, the fence did exactly what James had built it to do. Silently, invisibly, completely. No copperheads in the mulch beds. No cottonmouths on the pool deck. Not a single venomous snake incident in the entire subdivision. Then Karen moved into Lot 14. She was 39, white, curvy, with voluminous curly golden hair, sharp blue eyes. Always in her signature dark pink blazer over a black blouse and tailored black trousers. Pearl earrings catching whatever light was available. She had been HOA president for exactly 1 year before she bought the corner lot with the best angle on the lake. The best angle, that is, if a 6-foot cedar wall were not standing directly in the way. She never asked what the fence was protecting against. The question never occurred to her. All she saw was an obstacle between her Instagram page and the water it promised. The pressure arrived in deliberate stages. Karen was organized, if nothing else. First came a laminated violation notice, zip-tied to James' fence on his own side of the property line, which meant someone had trespassed onto his land to place it. The notice cited HOA architectural standards. James was not an HOA member. He had never signed a covenant, never paid a single dollar in association dues, never agreed to one word of the restrictions that governed Heron Point Estates. He called the county zoning office and had written confirmation of full compliance on file within the week. A Columbia law firm's letter arrived next, 2 dense pages demanding the fence come down within 30 days. James's attorney laughed when she read it. "Zero standing," she said. "Written to frighten, not to win." A code enforcement officer showed up shortly after to investigate an anonymous complaint about an unpermitted structure. James walked him the full 640-foot line, produced the original 2015 building permit on the spot, and watched the officer mark the complaint unfounded before he reached the end of the driveway. Every letter, every notice, every county confirmation went into a dated manila folder. 3 escalations, 3 failures. The fence was still standing. Karen had watched her tools, violation notices, law firms, anonymous complaints, fail one by one against a man who responded to every move with documentation instead of anger. She had run out of patience, and a man who understood ecosystems for a living had already started to understand exactly what that meant. James and his wife left for Asheville in late September to meet their first grandchild. Karen moved within days. An emergency board meeting notice went out at 11 o'clock at night, technically within the required 48-hour window, but timed precisely to ensure minimal readership. The one board member who had previously raised concerns about wildlife liability near the pool never received the notice at all. 3 of the 4 members present voted yes on Resolution 14, a community sightline restoration initiative, citing a covenant clause that, as James' attorney later confirmed, applied legally only to structures on HOA-owned common property, not to a private landowner's parcel. Karen told the demolition company, per the invoice obtained months later through legal discovery, that the property owner had verbally consented to removal. Not one person from that crew ever contacted James. On a Thursday morning, while he held his newborn grandchild 400 miles north, an excavator drove through 640 feet of cedar privacy fencing, ripped the buried hardware cloth skirt from the ground in long ragged strips, and carved a continuous channel of raw, exposed earth running unbroken from the cypress marsh straight into 41 manicured backyards. Karen filmed the whole thing on her phone and posted the video to the neighborhood Facebook group that same afternoon. The caption read, "Sightline restoration complete. Your lake view is officially back, Heron Point." The marsh had been paying attention the whole time. 9 days after the demolition, the first snake appeared, an eastern rat snake coiled in a hydrangea bed 2 lots in from the old fence line. Harmless. But 63 alarmed comments flooded the neighborhood Facebook group in under an hour. 4 days later, the king snake turned up on the back porch of the one board member who had voted against the resolution. Then on a Tuesday morning in early October, a homeowner 3 doors down from Karen stepped barefoot onto her back porch and very nearly placed her foot directly onto a copperhead pressed flat against the warm concrete door frame. She saw the hourglass pattern a half-second before her brain registered danger. She backed away 1 slow step at a time, went inside, locked the door behind her, and called animal control with hands shaking so badly she misdialed twice before the line connected. The local television affiliate covered the story. A wildlife officer confirmed the species on camera. Then came the cottonmouth, nearly 4 feet long, dark as standing water, found half submerged in the drainage swale directly behind the pool cabana. Jaw held open white as a warning flag, filmed by a teenager whose 31-second video spread through the neighborhood group faster than anything Karen had ever managed to post. The HOA's insurance carrier cited attractive nuisance liability and informed the association that continued pool operation without a documented wildlife mitigation plan would void the facility's coverage entirely. The county health department issued a temporary closure order the same week. The laminated notice went up on the pool gate on a Wednesday. The pool that had anchored every listing photo, every open house pitch, every premium price point in that subdivision was padlocked shut, because the barrier that had protected it for 9 silent years had been torn out of the ground so one person could see the lake from her patio. In December, a special HOA meeting produced a spreadsheet that made a very quiet room turn very loud. The demolition invoice from the contractor, $8,200, pulled from association reserves without a proper membership vote. Wildlife mitigation consultant assessment, $12,000, with a follow-up trapping and exclusion program projected at another $22,000. Pool reopening conditional on a full reconstructed perimeter barrier meeting tightened county specifications, $18,000. A local real estate agent presented data showing a 6% average drop in asking prices across the subdivision, directly attributed to documented wildlife safety concerns and an indefinite pool closure. Across 41 homes averaging $310,000 each, that number became catastrophic fast. Total direct association costs, over $60,000. Estimated collective property value loss, close to $800,000. Every dollar of it traceable in a straight unbroken line to one unauthorized demolition order signed by one person who had never once asked what the fence was there to protect. Karen resigned 11 days after the meeting, describing it in her email as stepping back to allow fresh leadership to guide the community through a challenging season. It was a remarkably elegant way to phrase a crisis she had personally engineered from start to finish. The new board contacted James' attorney within a week. They would fund the complete reconstruction of his fence, same materials, same specification, same buried skirt, at full HOA expense, with a county-recorded agreement filed in writing that no future board could authorize its removal without James' written consent. The fence went back up in February. James stood on his side of the property line, black shirt, black jeans, round boots, and watched each cedar panel rise into place, the same invisible infrastructure that had protected 41 families for 9 years before someone decided an Instagram caption mattered more than the ecosystem living behind it. The lake never filed a complaint. The marsh never sent a letter. It just waited for a gap, moved through it exactly when James had said it would, and taught the most expensive lesson in the history of Heron Point Estates. Some people learn from an expert's warning. Some people need the marsh to explain it in person.